Our feature presenter is Spencer X. Smith. He's an author of the best-selling book, Rotoma, and the founder of SpencerXSmith.com and Amplify. He helps people responsible for business development use social media to increase their influence and sales. He's been called a digital marketing expert by Forbes, spoke at the New York Stock Exchange last September, and has been featured and quoted in dozens of publications. He's going to share a little bit more about how he did that today. One thing you might not know about our presenter is back in the day, he used to be a drummer and manager for a successful rock band, Myopic Sun. And today he's here to share his step-by-step process for growing your business using free publicity without spending a dime on PR. So without further ado, give a warm Business Accelerator welcome to Spencer X. Smith.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. So I wouldn't be much of a social media guy had I not asked you right off the bat to follow me on whatever social media platform you deem most appropriate. And this is a shameless plug for the book that he had mentioned, by the way, Chris, Rotoma, which I call the return on top of mind awareness, which is people thinking about you versus not thinking about you. And that's going to tie in really well with today's talk as far as how we get people to think about you more often. Okay? All right. Let's see. Sorry about that. All right. So what is public relations? And this is something that gets batted around a lot. It's been a little bit maligned as far as what that actually means. So PR, in my estimation, is simply raising your public profile. It's raising your public profile. So in other words, it's getting people to think about you in perhaps a positive light. You've heard perhaps that any publicity is good publicity, and I don't agree with that at all. And what do you guys think? Any publicity is good publicity?
Depends on what you're selling.
Depends on what you're selling. Yeah, explain that a little bit. Just give us what you think. So with the product, yep.
Consumable, probably not the most, if you hear it's full of lead or that, unethical labor is being used in other countries to produce it, probably not the best publicity. But
so with the product, I'm sorry to interrupt you, just so people watching can hear this. So with the product, it's probably not the best because of lead or maybe some other stuff as to how it's made.
Exactly.
Okay, so what would be?
Just to know where your money's going. So something like that can be, you don't want to be supporting something evil.
Gotcha.
But for people, I would say, more often than not, it's a good thing, except for maybe politicians. But
So I like the caveats that you're giving us, right? So you're saying for people more often than not, it's good to have people thinking about you, unless you're seen as negative, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So perhaps going back to the initial hypothesis that all publicity is maybe not good publicity, we'll see, right? We'll see how it plays out. So let's talk about raising your public profile. So this is how you can save yourself 58 minutes. And those of you watching at home, after this, you can just turn it off and go from there. So save yourself the time and just do this. So in looking at my Twitter profile here, what you're going to see is it's very simple as to my description of myself. Social media tips after I prove they really work, and then I do some handles as to the company with which I work over there with Helen, UW-Madison, where I'm fortunate enough to teach periodically, Rutgers Business School, where I'm fortunate enough to teach, and then I give a little plug to the book as well, because we only have finite space, right, to edit our description. So what I propose you do is just edit the description to see fit what you think people should think about you. So what I put is perhaps the greatest social media mind of this or any other generation. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there will ever be. Hashtag I'm awesome. So save yourself 58 minutes, just do this, right? Okay, you say, well, I don't have a Twitter account. What about a LinkedIn account? So my LinkedIn account here says banking and financial services social media strategies only after I prove they work. I'm a speaker and I'm author of a Rotoma book. So if you wanted to skip all the hard work, all you gotta do is put expert, guru, ninja, rockstar, shaman, and then balloon puppy dog head butter, which is compliments my 4-year-old daughter, because I said, what's a cool name? And she said balloon puppy dog head butter. So I put that in the description. So please, guys, don't use any of these silly words like expert or maven or ninja or rockstar or guru or shaman or Sherpa. If you actually want to be known in your space, skip all the self-fulfilling stuff. Stop saying things about yourself and let other people say those things about you instead, because your future self, as I say here, will definitely thank you if you don't say silly stuff now. You guys with me on this? We see a lot of experts, we see a lot of gurus, a lot of shamans and Sherpas and stuff like that. Let's just skip that. Let's just actually do the work required. And so we'll talk about exactly what to do and how best to do it, okay? Now, why is third-party validation important? And what is it, really? Like, what's third-party validation? It's authentic. Thank you, Linda. Yeah, it's authentic. So instead of you declaring yourself an expert allow other people to bestow that title upon you. So I have one simple policy when it comes to how I do business, and I try to give away the store. So I prove that stuff works first, and then and only then am I qualified to talk about it. So anything that I talk about today, I've actually done myself first, and I'll share with you exactly how I did what I did, including all of these things that you see here. Is that cool? Okay. So these are some of the other things. So not just that top masthead, which I'll get into in just a second, but one other thing that I'm going to talk about is targeted publications, because I feel like for all of us, it's a lot easier to produce content for those that are within our niche that we're targeting. So a few of these here, this one is for In Business Magazine here in Madison, where I have a column that I write called #SocialBiz. This is Marketing the Law Firm, which is targeted at the largest 200 law firms in the world and their chief marketing officers. This one is the feature in Forbes that I'll go through in a little bit. And this one up here is in financial services, so specifically in the 401k space, and I write for that magazine as well. And I'll break down exactly how I did those things. You guys good so far? Okay, cool. So this was a very cool day, February 17th of 2016. I had, back in September of 2015, spoken at something called Social Media Breakfast here in Madison. And as one of the slides that I shared what I call the Summerfest effect. And you may have seen this in the book before, you may have seen me present this before, so I'm not going to belabor it here, but suffice to say, as you move from the bottom of the pyramid to the top of the pyramid, it gets more and more exclusive. So there are a lot more people who have joined a band than have gotten out of the proverbial basement and actually performed for people. There's a lot more people who have written a song than have actually released an album. There's a lot more people who have sold tickets to their own performance that they put on somewhere, as opposed to those who played at Summerfest. So this is an analogy that I use a lot, where once we get this milestone, once our band had played Summerfest for the first time in 2003, we could never retreat from that. So we had achieved what I call a credibility milestone. So we will forever be known as a band who performed at Summerfest. So I'm recollecting this story at Social Media Breakfast, September of 2015, and I break down this pyramid that you see on the bottom, much more low tech, right? I had just written this in the morning that I presented, and I said, now my goal, you guys, here at Social Media Breakfast, is I would really like to be featured in Forbes, because I would see that as my equivalent, personal brand-wise, as the Summerfest effect was for our band. So once I'm in Forbes, I can never go back from those things. So I'd broken down the pyramid, made it a stepwise process, because this is really important. You want to give yourself credit for the things that you've already done, so suddenly it doesn't seem as unmanageable anymore. It doesn't seem as unrealistic anymore. So if I look at just, I've never done anything, and I want to be in Forbes, that's a huge chasm, right? So when you break it down here, you can see that the first thing that I gave myself credit for, that I'd ask you to do for yourself as well, especially when it comes to your personal brand and getting PR, is say I wrote for my own website, right? Hey, I did this. I wrote a blog on my own website. I've written on LinkedIn. I've written on In Business. I've written for Law Journal newsletters, for something called Business to Community, for MSN Money, for Yahoo Small Business Advisor. And when I was concluding that talk for Social Media Breakfast, I said, now this Forbes and Inc., so those two magazines, those in my mind would be probably interchangeable, but I feel like Forbes would really be that pinnacle. So because I shared it publicly, September of 2015, people didn't let me off the hook, which was really cool, and I suggest you do the same thing. So if you have these goals about something you'd like to achieve, declare them publicly, and people will hold you responsible. Because I said that September 2015, people would come to me in November, and they'd go, how's the Forbes thing coming, Spence? I go, oh yeah, I did say that, didn't I? I better actually pursue that, right? Because I want to actually fulfill what I had told people. So you fast forward to that day, February of 2016, and that was actually the cover of Forbes. So this is me, obviously, on the right. And I'll break down exactly how that happened, okay? So it was a really cool day. Now, when you look at the article itself, what was really exciting for me is I got to know this writer for this piece, but then also she featured in the second paragraph exactly how I got to know her. So it's a very meta way. She was basically giving away the store, much like I'm doing right now with you. Is that she said, I met Smith, this is the second paragraph, I met Smith through my columns, or more accurately, through his social media shares in response to my posts. So just in that one sentence, she says, through his social media shares in response to my posts. She just basically said, look, this guy showed me that he was listening to me, and something happened. And I'll show you exactly how that played out. Now, what is this thing called? I mentioned this earlier. What is this actually called when you say, I've been featured and quoted in this? What's that verbiage called?
Social proof.
Social proof, for sure, for sure. Yeah, and this in the parlance of magazines, they'd call this a masthead. Okay, so this is your masthead. This is basically your PR, your personal PR. And my goal for you is to help you get the masthead you want. Because it gives us a lot more confidence when it comes to those of us doing business development, for those doing speaking, for those of us doing personal branding. Because let's face it, whether you're building your personal brand knowingly or unknowingly, it's something we all have now. You guys seen that Black Mirror episode about building creepy, right? And you know that's coming. So what I'm alluding to is the fact that in the future, people will be able to rate social interactions on a scale of 1 to 5 with everyone, and we'll all have ratings. It might happen, might not, right? But it's creepy. It might play out. So my goal is to help you get the masthead you want. Now, one caveat I have an ask of you. As you build this out, as you discover what works for you, I ask you to share these things. Can you do that for me? As you build out your own, I want you to find an audience that's just a little bit behind you and say, you know how you aspired to do what I just did? I'm going to break it down and show you exactly how to do it. Now, that's not just a noble thing, but what it does is it reinforces to you all the work that you had put in. Because, guys, the biggest frustration that we had in our band was after we had played Summerfest for the first time, people would come up and go, how did you guys do that? And I go, well, honestly, I cold called the Summerfest office, and they told me what to do, and that's what I did. And they go, okay. And I go, you guys, you got to do the same thing. This is not a zero-sum game. There are 700 bands that play Summerfest. I want you guys to be one of those bands too. And they go, I don't know if we're ready yet, Spence. And they talk themselves out of it. Okay, they talk themselves out of it. So what they need from you, the people that you are going to serve as you build your personal brand, is they need that power from you. They need that confidence from you to say, here is the path I took, and I want you to emulate me. You guys going to do that for me? Please? Okay, awesome. So what's the difference between these three things? You've probably heard these batted around a little bit. Differences between these kinds of PR, what I'd call paid, earned, and owned. And once again, PR is considered public relations. So paid PR is you giving cash money to people. I'd be like, hey, I want to be on TV. I need to find a PR company to give them money to put me on TV. Is that possible? If you walk around with a big checkbook, can you get on really whatever you want? Yes. The answer is of course, right? That's how it works. Now let's think about earned PR. Well, that's the sweet spot in my estimation. That's where we have people who have tremendous content needs, and they need to fulfill that content need because they have an expectation from their audience. So whether it's a website or a magazine or a newspaper or you name it, that's where we'd best fit. And that's the strategy I'll share with you today. And then owned PR, the last one, is the evergreen stuff. So in other words, the stuff that you have yourself that you can continue to use over and over again. So not news items, not blogging on something that's contemporary, but something where you're sharing your knowledge. So once again, the thing that I just asked you to do, sharing exactly what it is that you know. Now, earned PR is really hard in 1998. And now it's not. So when I was growing up in Milwaukee as a kid, we had 3 television stations, CBS, ABC, and NBC. Fox didn't even exist then. We had PBS, but no one was really on PBS. But there was only finite amounts of media. There were only so many television stations or radio stations or newspaper. But now everybody has tremendous, tremendous demands, especially if you have an electronic version of your famous publication. Especially if you have an electronic version. And I'll break that down here in just a minute. What is more difficult in your estimation? Getting featured in the Huffington Post or on Madison.com, which is the Wisconsin State Journal? What's more difficult?
Huffington Post.
The Huffington Post? Because it's more famous, right? Yeah, it has a higher profile. Let's just take a look at the data a little bit. So Madison.com, on an average month, they get about $762,000 worth of web visitors. Because that's the way that all of these, bless you, all of these web properties monetize their stuff. Is they say, we have X amount of eyeballs, you want to show a banner ad that no one looks at, you want to show a banner ad, and you'd pay us money because that's what it's worth. Okay? So that's how many organic searches they have is 426,000, and they have $762,000 per month that they do business-wise. Now, let's compare that number organic search, 426K, compare it to Huffington Post. Huffington Post has 27.7 million, and their traffic is worth 27.3 million. So if you're the Huffington Post, you have more content needs than Madison.com. And the answer is yes, because more people are there more frequently. Okay, more people are there more frequently, so you have a bigger content need. You have to do more stuff. So which writers and contributors then have a need for more content? Well, it's those at the famous publications. It's just like when we played Summerfest, there were 700 bands. 700. You go to Taste of Madison, there are 6, 7, more, 30. It's grown to 30. Thanks, Brody. It used to be less, right? Yes. Yes, back in the day, back when I was in a band. Okay, good. Thanks for telling me that, though. So if we look at these people who write for major publications, so Sophie Andrews, wonderful contributor to the Huffington Post, look at the frequency that she writes. July 11th, July 18th, July 25th, like clockwork, every week, right? Because if she doesn't produce, she's going to lose that spot. You take this writer from Forbes, Cheryl Connor, look at this, July 16th, July 19th, July 21st. She's about every 3 days, every 2 days. So those are two very famous publications, the Huffington Post and Forbes. Now you contrast that with a local publication. Look at this person, you know? The one secret you need to know to get great customer reviews. That's the title. September 5th. This person waits an entire 23 days before writing another article called 4 Social Media Lessons from Donald Draper and speaking at the New York Stock Exchange. Now, who do you suppose that lazy writer is? That lazy writer is me. So if you come to me and say, hey, Spence, I have an idea for a story, I might go, I don't know, maybe I'll write one, maybe I wouldn't. But if you go to those who have these constant deadlines, Huffington Post, Forbes, and go, I have something to contribute to your audience, and it's not spamming, it's saying, I've read your stuff, I see that you haven't talked about this thing, here's my perspective, here's where it might be interesting for your readers, the likelihood of you getting featured by somebody famous versus going to me, who's lazy, is higher. Ironically, it's easier to get in famous publications than it is hard publications. You guys understand why that is? I mean, it's a significant thing to think about, okay? So my proposal for you is follow what we call the Summerfest effect and play big first and then play small. So we did with our band, we played Summerfest, we aspired to do that, and then we went to Bands on the Beach in Manitowoc, and we go, hey, we played the world's largest music festival. Do you think we can play your festival? And they go, of course. You played, you've been vetted. I mean, you're great, right? So if you can go to a publication or to a place where you want to give a speech or go to a business and go, hey, here's us featured in this famous publication that you've heard of, suddenly things will start to cascade for you. Because so many people, guys, talk themselves out of doing the big stuff first. They want to build up to it. And I propose you give yourself credit, but really try to play in that space. Okay, play in that space. So, how do you play big? Well, how do we find those influential voices that need you? There's a couple different strategies. And this is the best one that I found by far. This is called Haro. Who uses Haro here? Okay, you do? Can you just give us a brief?
Writers will, we got like an email 3 times a day with pitches from writers who are looking for experts to chime in.
Okay, so what you had said, that was perfect. That was exactly right. So 3 times per business day, you're going to get an email. It's free. You can get an email that says, hey, I write for Time Magazine, the Chicago Tribune, Forbes, MSN, whatever, right? Dental Weekly, all of this niche stuff. And it's going to say, I'm a writer. I'm on deadline. My editor tasked me with writing about cryptocurrency, and I know nothing about this. I did my research, but I have to validate what it is that I said with an expert in the field. Can you please be that person for me? So this is a really significant thing, guys. If you scan this and you scan the emails that come in, you're going to see stuff where you go, I could do that. I know that. Because it's really, really overt, specific needs. You guys have something? Okay, you good? Okay. And by the way, I have a one-page cheat sheet, and I'll show this to you later as well, but it's spencerxsmith.com/PR, where I have a one-page PDF that breaks down exactly how to use Haro, okay? So what Help a Reporter Out does, here's what it looks like. Here's an example email. This is just a dozen of the many, many queries that come in. So I'm just going to read you a couple, just to show you how specific these are. This is the store suggestion box vows the Bridal and Wedding Business Journal. Pros and cons of payday loans from Self Lender magazine. Developing omni-channel retail, enterprise apps today. Realtors in Las Vegas from Lawn Starter. What should managed service providers offer Oracle or SAP HANA, or both from Talking Cloud? And number 10 is probably my favorite, 5 ways people fumble 401k plan choices from Newsmax, because that's the industry I used to be in. But you read through these things, and it's not, we're just looking for somebody. It's I'm looking for somebody now to talk to you about this. Because guys, reporters are on constantly rolling deadlines, and all they want to do is get their stuff out the door. So if you can help them by going, wow, this is something that I know, you get back to them expeditiously, and they'll start to quote you. So here's an example of one of these emails. Molly Beck says, looking for digital networking masters. I'm like, I don't know if I'm a master, but at least maybe I could answer the question. Looking to interview people that have mastered networking using digital tools, including networking via email, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Vine, and more. It shows you how old that is. It talks about Vine. And requirements, we'll be looking for both specific tips and stories to share. So she has a need, right, for those in digital marketing. So this is my response to her. You can see it's pretty long, and I won't belabor it here, but this is important. This is something I'm going to ask you to do. The only custom part of this is the 3 sentences where I'm answering her question. So I have a Google Doc that has the first sentence as my bona fides, which is, hey, I'm Spencer X. Smith, former VP of sales for a Fortune 100 company turned consultant, and I also teach digital marketing and social media classes at the University of Wisconsin. And I have a policy to teach what I first practiced and proven to work myself. That's kind of my differentiator, right? But then I look through and I say, well, she's asking for this stuff, and here are my 3 sentences in response to what it is that she wants. So I get this Haro email first thing in the morning, 5:15 a.m. Central, give or take. I see this query, I go, well, here, I already have my template done. I can just pound this out really quickly because it's something that I have in my head that I haven't yet typed, and I answer it and I get it out the door to her. Now, does she reply? I probably wouldn't share the story if she didn't, right? So she said, hey, Spencer, thanks so much for responding. I'm writing a book for McGraw-Hill coming out in early spring 2017, and can you give me something for it? I say, cool. So I give her something for it. This is really what she asked. Feel free to respond to all or just some of the questions. So all this really did, guys, was open a door to have a conversation with an author who has a forthcoming book. So you're going to see this happen all through these Haro queries, this helper reported out queries, this is the future before it happens. People are saying, I'm writing this article that's going to come out in 2 days or a week or a month. I want you to know what's going to happen, and if you want to be part of it, you can be part of it. And so because I opened up that relationship with her and I answered, if you pick up this book from my new friend, Molly Beck, it's now a best-selling book, you'll see my quote in it. So I got to help her, and now we become friends. And so when I give her shout-outs on social media and she gives me shout-outs on social media, does it work for both of us? The answer is, of course, yes. And this cost me nothing to get to know her, and it took me about 4 minutes to type a response to her. So these are people who have great influence and great needs, and all you have to do is open that door. Now, once again, here is the cheat sheet. Just to give you a visual of what it looks like, spencerxsmith.com/PR. It breaks down exactly what to do, step by step, sign up here, do this, check this, and actually includes a script here, which is how I got featured in the Huffington Post for the first time. Word for word script that you can copy and use yourself. Just change up my name with yours, okay? Because otherwise that probably wouldn't work very well. Okay? And one thing I'm going to give you at the end, this is a very bonus part of this. It didn't make any sense, the very bonus part, whatever. Okay, so what if they don't use your submission? Okay? What if you give them something and they don't use it? Here's the thing. Have you ever thought to yourself, what should I share on my website or social media or my email list? Well, you had something in your head that you hadn't actively distilled into digital form before that you knew that until somebody prompted you, you didn't know that you knew. Because very few of us are hammering out hundreds of words a day, right? Writing our next great novel. But we have in our heads all of this knowledge that we haven't yet put into digital form. So somebody prompting you and going, write stuff about this, and then you answering their questions will be the way that you can then propagate what it is that you know. You guys try that for me? Okay, sweet. Thank you. Now, this is why this works really, really well. It's what I call a virtuous cycle. So you've heard of a vicious cycle or a vicious circle where things go badly. This is a virtuous cycle. Reporter reaches out, says, I need help. And by the way, as an aside, if I'm a reporter and I have a stable of sources on whom I can rely, I don't turn to a feature or a service like Haro. I don't say, hey world, email me and tell me what you think, because that requires work, right? So if I have a stable of sources, I don't have to do that. But what this is telling us is that this person is writing about something for which they don't have an expert, and you can be that expert for them. And they're on deadline, they need you, you help them. So that's the first step, right? You help a reporter. The second step is a reporter helps you, because a reporter quotes you, puts a link to your website, and says, you are now my expert in this article, which is significant. Think from a social media sharing standpoint. What do you put on social media? Hey, I was just in this article by this person, and she said this about me. Okay, so that's step 2, which is really cool. Step 3, you share it, right? You put it out on social media, and you go, this is great. This is really significant for me. What does the reporter do? Well, the reporter also does the same thing. The reporter shares it on social media, because that's his or her job, is to create content and go a step further and try to get people to read that content. And the last thing is that everybody else in the world that's not using this service and not sharing their knowledge, they all read it and share it themselves. So then you have a cool animation, right, which I just learned how to build today. So that was kind of fun. So that's my virtuous cycle, okay? Once you have that happen, that's where all of this plays out. Now guys, this is the thing. Once you are quoted in a publication, does that get old to you? Does that become old hat to you? Do you go, oh yeah, I already did that? Yeah, it's like, well, it was exciting at first, but now I've been in Forbes, that's fine, right? But you know who doesn't know? Every single other person on this planet doesn't know that that happened. So this is evergreen content that you can constantly share to talk about something significant, to show them why you are an expert in this field. Please.
How long can you ride that?
How long can you ride it?
Yeah.
I tell you what, I mean, when we had played in Summerfest, right, we had never stopped saying that we played at Summerfest.
But like
So-
the Forbes article from 2016 eventually.
The Forbes article from 2016 still pays dividends today because it's every bit as applicable. So that's the caveat, right, is what is the content? Is it, I want you to talk about tax trends for 2018? Is that going to be obsolete in 19? Most likely. But if it's something evergreen where you say, here's a set of best practices that I found for losing weight, eat right, and exercise, that might be applicable next year too, right? So it depends a lot on the content. That's an awesome question. Thank you. So why does that virtuous cycle work so well? Well, let's talk about the 1% rule of the internet. This comes from medicine. This is what we figured out when it comes to people who participate in medical communities. So doctors, 90% of people who participate in those are spectators. And the kids call these lurkers or creepers. They just consume other people's content. 9% actually engage in some capacity. So they like and they comment and they share. And 1% does what? Well, the 1% of people create all of the content that the other people consume and share. So I'll ask you to become part of that 1%, because when you create content, you by default become the voice of your industry. By default. You become the voice of your industry. Here's an example of this. So my friend, Jessie, who's an interior designer, she responded to a Haro request, help a reporter out request. It said, could you share your expertise on working with commercial clients and choosing artwork for corporate environments? Now, is anybody in here qualified to choose corporate artwork at all? I'm certainly not. But Jessie, like, that's all she does every day. So she looked at that request and she's like, well, this is something I can answer. This is a piece of cake. She answered it. So she's quoted there in the very first sentence, interior design, Jessica Gunlock. But then she wasn't satisfied with that. Look at that in the upper left there, 195 shares on social media. So there are all of these people that didn't have any idea who Jessie was before that she can now hang her hat on. So she wasn't satisfied with that though. She went out to LinkedIn and she shared this to LinkedIn and she said, check out this article I was interviewed for. Thanks, Spence, for inspiring me to do this. So she quoted, she didn't quote, that's the wrong word. She tagged me in her LinkedIn post. Okay, so when we differentiate here between the black text and the blue tag, what does that mean? Well, when I tag somebody on a social media platform and say something nice about them, what happens?
You get more recognized, more readily recognized by other people that you originally would not have come across.
I'm so glad that you said that. So you are recognized by people who you wouldn't have come across otherwise. So she's sharing with her network what I do, right? And so when she tags me, go ahead, what happens?
You share it.
Yeah, when she tags me, I get a heads up, right? I get the little red dot and I go, ooh, nice. And I press it, right? And I go, ooh, this is great. What did she say? Oh, she said something nice about me. Well, of course I'm going to like and comment and share it because she was nice to me. So her going out of her way to help her audience and then incorporating me in that then adds to her width of her message. Okay, so that gives us great social media fodder to share. Now, how do you know if this is working? Well, this is hard, and this is going to be frustrating for those of you who do it because I've been talking about this now for a couple of years, so I get a lot of feedback from people who go, I tried Haro and it didn't work. And here's why it doesn't work, is because reporters do not tell you that they've quoted you. You got to trust me on this. So you got to put a Google alert for your name, and you're going to see that people start to use your quote, and they just forgot to tell you. Because these poor freelance writers are writing for 15 different publications, constant deadlines. I don't know how they do it. Constant deadlines, and they put the piece out there, they quote you, they link to your website, and they go, I forgot to let you know. I did. So put a Google alert out for your name, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. If you answer one of these a day, you're going to start to get hits, especially if you follow the script. Please.
How would you put a Google alert out for your own name?
How could you do that?
Yeah.
Just Google Alerts, and then I know, and then put in your name, and put in variations of your name too.
I suppose I'm not in that much.
Oh, that's a great question though. But that's exactly a way to monitor either yourself or maybe companies that you're trying to work with or personal brands or whatever. So thanks for asking that. All right, this is especially important because a lot of websites syndicate from other sources. So an example of this is an entrepreneur article that I was actually quoted in. So we had 8 of us that were in this. And so this one article from Entrepreneur got picked up and syndicated to all these other sites. And so when I saw a link to from Fox News to my website, I'm like, that's pretty cool. They have a lot of readers. Fox News has a lot of readers. And suddenly there were all these people that were aware of me that weren't before. Please.
What if you have a website that's selling something and it gets picked up? Is there anybody you know who aren't overwhelmed? Or, you hear these horror stories about crashes.
So what you're telling me is you get publicity, and so many people come to your website that you're selling stuff on that your website goes down.
So is there a way to understand?
Yeah, just don't publicize your site at all, or just close your shop.
You just hear that over and over again, from
Yeah, but it's a wonderful thing when somebody's website goes down from being so trafficked. Yeah. Yeah, we could all wish for something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you Google alert certain key phrases that are like original material of yours if your material is just stolen?
Yeah, you can definitely look up on Google Alerts. You can definitely put in other stuff, especially if you're looking for plagiarism. Is that kind of what you're referring to? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's some nice plagiarism filters that are out there as well, where you can take and copy and paste text that might be worth considering. Cool. Okay. So, why is this important? Now, this is the only time I'm going to mention this the entire presentation, SEO, because it's super, super nerdy. But search engine optimization, long story short, if there are more important websites linking to yours, that's a good thing. Okay? So if a famous website links to yours, that gives you higher search engine rankings. So that's a good thing to have on your site. If people quote you and use your website, we want more of those things to happen. Now, how did I earn the feature in Forbes? Let me walk through mechanically exactly how this played out. Okay? Once again, just to reinforce what Cheryl had said, gave away the store. I met Smith through my columns, through his social media shares in response to my posts. Well, let's break this down exactly how this played out. By the way, before I get into this, in the materials that went out before this, we talked about Costco Connection. Did you guys see that in there where it said I've been in Costco Connection twice? Costco Connection is actually the United States largest print monthly publication. It's something like 18 million people get it. Now, the way that it goes out is in print form, in magazine form, and it's actually on their website, but it's in PDF form. Okay? So this weird thing happened when it came to print and electronic, is if I'm in print, if I'm in something like this, how do I get this to you? Like, I can physically give it to you and be like, open to page 64 and read it, and you'd be like, nah, I'm good, I believe you, right? But it's a lot easier to share electronic stuff. So as somebody who's been in the United States' largest print monthly publication twice, I tell you that electronic renditions of this from other publications that aren't as famous as this one are actually more valuable because you can share them more easily. So I either give people a physical copy or I send them to this PDF page and go, scroll in. You see how it's all pixelated here? It's like, no one can read any of this stuff. So electronic, oddly enough, is probably more valuable now than print, which is something we wouldn't expect, especially being an older guy like me. So this is what I did to get this Forbes writer's attention. Now, first of all, I met her via Haro. So she had sent out a request saying, I'm doing something on a piece on LinkedIn and I want your quotes. And I responded to her and I heard nothing back. First article came out, nothing. Second article about that same topic, nothing. Third article came out, nothing. I'm like, man, she's killing me. Like, she's ruining my confidence. How am I going to deal with this? But I started following her on Twitter and I go, wow, she writes really good stuff. Like, she basically writes articles just giving away the store on exactly what it is that people do. So this is a Twitter share here. And I just simply said 3 outstanding PR case studies from her handle on Twitter, from @CherylSnap, how PR evolved these founders' careers. Now, have you ever shared something on social media? Have you ever actually tagged the author? You have? Do you get responses? Sure. You do? Okay. So the more you do that, guys, the more these authors, the more these contributors to these famous publications are going to start paying attention to you. Because looking at this Twitter share here, this got 5 likes and 4 retweets. So who do you suppose retweeted and liked it? Well, she did. So that was really cool because she said, thank you, Spencer. So she liked it and retweeted it. Now, in my mind, what was interesting is I was really just trying to serve my audience. I go, this is something where she writes great stuff. I want to share it with them because then they're going to make me a higher priority on their feeds, right? They're going to want to see more from me. But then when she showed me that she was actually listening to me, that made me want to do it more. Because I'm like, wow, this is so cool that she's paying attention to me. This big famous Forbes writer is listening to what it is that I'm sharing. Now, think about this. Why would she do that? Like, why would she acknowledge little old me when she's this big, important Forbes writer? Well, think about her editor at Forbes wants what more than anything else?
Interesting content.
Interesting content is one answer. What's another one?
Readers.
Right. It's readers. It's eyeballs, right? Because that's how they monetize their site. So interesting content definitely drives that, right? But ultimately, the editor goes, how many page views, how many visitors did you give me? Because that's how we're making money. Because that's exactly what they want, visitors to their website. So when I'm going out of my way to invite my Twitter followers to go read her stuff, that's a good thing, right? Because writers love when you help them look good to their boss, right? They love that. This is a quote I'm going to ask you to consider. It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. So President Harry Truman said that. So instead of turning social media on ourselves and saying this is something that's about me, shine that spotlight on other people and watch what starts to happen. If you help other people look good with your social media accounts, things will happen that will be significant for you. Because this is what she did for me. So after about 5 months of sharing this stuff, you recall, September of 2015, I said I'm going to be in Forbes, right? People were asking me in November, December, January, Spence, are you going to do it? She cold reaches me and my website, February 15th of 2016, just says, Spencer, we have much in common. I'd love to write a column on some of your best PR tips for entrepreneurs that they could enact themselves without an outside agency. And examples work great too. Many thanks, Cheryl. That was all it took. That was all it took to get this article right here. And now we've had an ongoing relationship. So our book was featured in Forbes in November of last year because I maintained that relationship. So this was not a one and done. This was not I've been in Forbes and now I'm going to walk away. This is where she has tremendous power. She has tremendous needs from a content standpoint. And this is something that we can help each other out on. Now we're going to talk now about targeted publications and why these are so important. Okay? Now who here has heard of Napa.net? Okay, so not a single person. Not a single person. Now, this is what's really significant, what's changed everything when it came to digital and social media, is it's a lot easier to be quote unquote famous than it used to be. So we talked about how we only had 3 television stations, how we had limited newspapers, we had limited radio, et cetera. We now all have the ability to serve very niche audiences by simply finding out what it is that they need and going to them and going, how can I provide something for you? Now you guys have probably seen this phenomenon. There's a noun that wasn't even in our vernacular just a few years ago, and it's called a YouTuber. What is a YouTuber?
Someone who makes a living making movies for
It's-
their subscribers.
It's somebody who makes a living making videos on YouTube. So a week ago, I was speaking to a high school, and I asked the 25 kids in the room, hey, you guys know what a YouTuber is? They're like, what? Okay, dude, we're juniors and seniors in high school. Don't ask me dumb questions. Okay, fine. Who's your favorite YouTuber? 25 kids, how many answers? 25 different answers. So this one loves Portuguese water polo. Like, okay, that's cool. I love Asian watercolor paintings. I love watching people's Twitch Call of Duty, okay? Like all of these random disparate topics that have nothing to do with one another. 99% of people don't care about you. The 1% who do adore you. And now because we've decommoditized our offering and we're saying this is exactly for you, and we have this internet thing where we can just build it on the back of it and say, here is the content that you want, suddenly we can serve people. So no one in here, and perhaps no one online, has heard of Napa.net, but this is exactly my target audience. Exactly. So this Napa.net that you've never heard of before has this country music festival coming up this year. And it just happens to be the world's largest financial services festival at the same time. That has to do with 401k plans, which is exactly my niche. So this is something that's coming up a month from now in Nashville. And you can see here, it says that they have 2,000 attendees. And those are 2,000 attendees that I want to have know who I am exactly. So when I walk in a room, they go, you ring a bell for some reason, or I've seen your name, or I've seen your videos, or I've seen what you've written. So how did I start a relationship with Napa.net? Well, this is exactly how. By the way, all of these big companies that you see here that you may have heard of before, Fidelity, Mass Mutual, American Funds, BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, Oppenheimer, Nationwide, these are all the companies that I'm targeting. Okay, so very niche, like exactly where I want to be. I started writing for them. I started writing articles for them. Now, here's what's really interesting. If you go to a place that has an audience, and they have a magazine, a physical magazine, and they have a website, and you say, I'd like to speak to your audience, what are they going to reply to you? I would like to have access to your audience. What are they going to reply to you?
What's your credibility or experience you have?
They're going to say, what's your credibility? But before that, they're going to say, here's our rate card. It costs $1,600 per 6th page to advertise to our readers. How much money would you like to give us? So instead of looking at it that way, which people tend to skip over ads, maybe, I might just be making that up, but it seems like people skip ads a lot. Why not look at this thing and go, well, gosh, Napa.net, you have this website, and you have all these people that come to your site. What if I just offer to write some stuff for you that might serve your readers? Would that be okay? So instead of me offering them money to have me put my face in front of them, I'm saying, I'm going to write stuff for you. Can you put it out for free for me? And people then see my stuff and go, that was good. This is something that any one of us can do right this second. You can approach your niche publication and say, I want to produce content for you. Here's some stuff that I've written before. Do you think this might serve your audience? This works for me time and time again, guys. Financial services, law, in Business Magazine, all you have to do is ask. All you have to do is ask. So when you tweet out stuff like this, it says my latest article that I tweeted out this morning from Napa.net for financial services, 3 social media strategies to make the most of every conference. Special thanks to this guy for allowing me to contribute. And I linked to your website. Do you think they like that? When I send visitors to their website? The answer is yes. Now here's the key person that I want you to pay attention to. This person that I tagged in the handle here, Nevin ESQ, this is how I got in with Napa.net. I started doing some Google searching. I'm like, who's in charge of their website? Well, there happens to be a guy that calls himself the Chief Content Officer for American Retirement Association, which writes this magazine. So I reached out to Nevin Adams and I go, hey, Nevin, I know you probably have a tremendous content need. Is it something I can provide for you? And he goes, of course. I mean, you want to give me a free article that I can put out on my website? I'm like, yes, I do. And now I get to do that consistently. So it shows up both on their website and in their magazine. So when I get to see 2,000 people a month from now in Nashville and I walk through the room, the likelihood of them knowing who I am versus having no idea who I am is at least a little bit higher. At least a little bit higher by simply doing that. So find that targeted publication, be naive enough to think that they might want to read what it is that you write and publish on behalf of you to their audience. Find out who's in charge and be ignorant. Like, hey, can I help you? Don't talk yourself out of it. And if the first one says no, move on. And then move on, and then move on. Because once you have those first few, you can say, I've written here, and here, and here, and here, and they'll be like, well, of course we want you. Look at where else you've written, right? But it's getting that first step. Okay? Please.
Can you give the same article to various publications, or do you need to change it up?
Can you give articles to the same article to multiple publications? I'm just repeating it, Linda, because so people can hear.
Understand.
So yes, most allow you to syndicate your content. They don't demand that you need original content. A few, notwithstanding, are that way. Like Forbes, if you're an original writer for Forbes, they only want you to write for their site. But the vast majority say repurpose your stuff.
Okay.
That's okay. Yep, good question. Thank you. So when I get to go to the event that looked like that last year in Las Vegas where there were 400 people in the room, the assumption now, when I write and maintain this relationship with this person, Nevin, is that I'm going to speak in Nashville in April as well, so in a month from now. So when I ask him, hey, I see this thing is coming up, can I also talk about the stuff I've written? He goes, well, of course you're on the agenda. So the assumption is there, guys. So once you have that relationship, you can build upon the relationship. So it's very simple to maintain that. And in fact, on their LinkedIn profile, they might go as far as to put you out to their audience. And then suddenly you're the only person that's known in social media when it comes to financial services, which is my aspiration. So I want you to be that for your audience as well. So here are your 4 steps to take now. Number 1, please go and download the cheat sheet. It took me a long time to create that, and it was really hard, and I went through a lot of trial and error, so just grab it and take it for free. Just spencerxsmith.com/PR. Number 2, create a Google Doc with your response templates. What I want you to do is make this as frictionless as possible, as seamless as possible, so when you see a help a reporter out query and you go, oh, that's the one I want, you have that Google Doc all set up with exactly your script. All you do is put in those sentences that are going to be seminal for that response and just push it out to the reporter right away. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is I want you to help someone else look good using social media, preferably that person has the audience that you want. Try it on me. Tag me on something. I'll retweet your stuff. I have 12,100 followers. It's not a lot, but it's more than 0. Okay? 4, answer at least one HARO query today. There will be one probably coming out imminently. If it already hasn't, there will be one coming out probably at about 4:30 p.m. Scan it, see what you're qualified to respond to, and respond. Okay, so please pursue those 4 steps. And I have one last ask, besides how you share as you figure out what you do to your network, as you figure out exactly what works for you. So I'm going to ask you to text this code, SXS, which are my initials, to 66866, and I'll give you 3 PDFs from our book.